Hi there, my name's Tim Flux and I run a company called TF Tune Shocks, which we've been doing for the last 5 years, and our business is mainly to help you and customers like yourselves to get the best out of your suspension. As part of the Grime Time feature on this MBUK DVD, we're going to be running through basic setup and tuning tips for your suspension front and rear. The basics of suspension are there's two main components of any suspension. Number one, you have the spring, which has to support the weight of the rider. And the spring can either be a coil spring, in this case, which you then have different rates for the weight of the rider, or you have air pressure on a lot of the lower travel and lighter weight forks, which again are lower pressure for the lighter rider or higher pressure for the heavier rider. In the other side of the fork, on the other leg, we have the damping, or in some forks it's in both legs. And the damping is normally oil damped, and that controls the speed of the fork, both in compression, and compression means when the fork is going down, or in rebound when the fork is coming back up. And those we can normally adjust on most forks by turning a screw either externally on the higher end forks, or some forks internally. There are a few forks, I'm afraid, that don't have any adjustment, and then we have to go inside and make an adjustment for you. On the Lyric here, we have coil spring here in the left hand leg, and then on the Lyric's case, it's what they call U-turn. We can turn this knob at the top and it will alter the travel of the fork anywhere from 115 to 160 just by turning the knob on the top. Then on the right hand side of the fork, we have the damping. The oil is contained up in this leg here, and we have adjustment on the top for the compression and on the bottom for the rebound. So once you get your spring rate correct, because that is the first thing to get correct on any fork or rear shock, is always get your spring rate correct. Once you've got your spring rate or your air pressure correct, the next thing to dial is the damping. And the most important part of the damping is the rebound. So if you're riding along and you're finding that when you've hit a bump, the fork is coming back and the handlebars are trying to take out your teeth, things like that, you need to slow that thing down. And normally on most forks it is on the lower part of the leg. There is an adjuster on, again, most forks it's red, and you would turn it clockwise, slowly, gently, just turn it until you feel it stop. Be quite careful because some of them can be quite delicate inside. Then when it stops, if you push the fork down, you will feel it should come back a lot slower, and you would normally then have to open it, and depending on the fork you might turn it maybe half a turn or one turn back from fully closed. Or on forks that have clicks, that's little movements, and it may be only 20-degree movement, normally turn it back 3 or 4 clicks and try again. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's around about half a turn open. Now I'm going to push on it. That noise you can hear, that's the high-speed shims on the rebound opening. Don't worry about it, that means it's working, the rebound's working. And the way I try and set rebound is I push on the fork and then snatch it back quickly and just see if I can just lift the wheel off the ground. And if I can't, before the fork fully extends, it's around the right speed. So you've got the correct spring rate or the air pressure, depending on your fork. You've set your rebound. The final thing to set is your compression. Normally on most forks it is on the top of the right hand leg. So on the fork here, we have on the outside is the high speed compression, and on the inside is the low speed compression. High and low speed doesn't mean the speed you're riding at. It means the actual speed the fork has to move to overcome an obstacle. So in low speed, that would mean when you're pedaling to make it firmer from when you're pedaling, or when you're braking, so to resist brake dive, you can put more low speed compression in. And then the high speed is basically for when you're absorbing the bumps, and you can have a very sharp square edge bump. It can only be very small, it may only be 5 centimeters high, but it's square edged, And when you hit that at speed, the fork has got to get out of the way very, very quickly. And if you have too much high-speed compression on, you will get the shock come through your handlebars and nearly take you off. And as a basic rule, you normally try and run the minimum that you can. So you'd normally go out riding first of all with it fully anti-clockwise, any compression adjustment. Go and ride. If you then find that you've got the right spring rate, everything, your rebound's good, but like say, under braking the fork is going down too much, or on jumps it's going down too much, what you can do is you can try a few clicks or half a turn of compression, turning it clockwise, then try again and see how it feels, and until you get it right. Some forks, if you put too much compression on, when you do hit stuff really fast, square edge bumps, you will find that the fork is quite harsh, and then you might have to back it off again. So to sum up, to get the correct fork set up, the first and most important thing, get your right spring rate. So if you've got a coil spring, you may need to buy a new one, because they come standard, set for 12 stone or 70 kilos. Then once you've got the right spring rate, then you need to dial your rebound to get the right rebound speed, so the fork's not coming back too quickly and trying to take your teeth out, or not too slowly so it doesn't come back quickly enough for the next bump. And then if it does that, if it's too slow, you'll end up going over the handlebars. Then the final thing is to set your compression, and that you normally start on minimum and go from there. Okay, going to very briefly look at rear shocks. With the rear shocks, again, we have the two mediums. We have the spring, which in this case is a coilover shock. So we've got a coil spring, steel coil spring on the outside, and then inside here, this chamber, and going through the piggyback, we've got the oil damping, which we can control, in this case, in one way. With the rebound damping, we can make it slower or make it faster. And the other thing you can adjust is the preload of the spring by turning this collar. But you mustn't turn it more than 3 or 4 turns. Again, just read your manufacturer's recommendations. If you turn it too much, you run a risk of you'll snap the spring or you could damage your frame. Then the other type of common rear shock is the air rear shock. This is a Fox float. So we now have the spring is now an air chamber, which we can either increase the air pressure for a heavier rider or decrease the pressure for a lighter rider. Then we have the damping, which is in this cylinder here. Okay, and that's the shaft that goes in and out, but the damping oil is inside there, and we can control the speed of damping by the rebound, adjusting the rebound fast or slow. So here we have a fifth element coilover rear shock on a specialized enduro. And I'm just going to show basic settings. The first thing you would always set would be the spring, and to set the spring you're going to need to measure the sag. And to measure the sag on a bike, what you need to do is to sit on the bike with your riding kit on, basically leaning against something. I'm just going to lean against something, and you want to push down and let the suspension push you back up. And now you need to get a friend to measure between the centres, so between that point there, so it's the centre of the shock, the eye to eye, measure that length. So now it's 200 millimeters with me sat on the bike, and then you can work out, because when you get off the bike you can measure again the distance between the two centres. In this case at the moment it is 222 millimeters when it's fully extended. So that means that the shaft is compressing 22 millimeters, and I know the stroke of this shock is around about 70 millimeters. So I've got a sag of around about 28%, something like that. You can do the maths. There are charts on certain websites. On our website there are charts telling you what the sag is. And ideally, for most applications, you want anywhere from about 25 to 35% sag. Depends on how you ride. A little less if you're a jumper. And to change the sag, you can change the sag very, very slightly by adjusting the preload. So if I wanted to make the sag less, I can put more preload on. Or if I want more, I can take preload off. But the main way of adjusting sag, because that will only adjust it by around 1% at the most, Otherwise, if you need to adjust it more, you change the spring. Either take a harder or a softer spring. So, we've got the correct spring, now we're going to adjust the rebound. And again, I'm just going to go down and adjust it. In this case, we don't have an adjusting screw after using an Allen key. I'm going to screw it clockwise until it stops gently. It's just stopped there. And now when I press on the rear shock, you can see it's coming back very, very slowly. And that wouldn't be very good. When I hit consecutive bumps, the shock would not come back, so my wheel would just skip across the ground. That would be much, much too slow. I'll go to the other extreme. I'm going to open it completely. And now it comes back a little bit too fast, in fact a lot too fast, and the problem there would be that you would hit a bump, or you maybe do a jump and the whole bike would kick and you end up on the front wheel, probably with your nose in the dirt and maybe a little trip to the A&E, which is not recommended. So what we do is we're just going to screw it in, again go fully closed, so fully clockwise, and then we're going to back it out and around about, I'm going to guess at one turn first of all, and then try it. Probably somewhere around there is good. So that when I jump on it, it's not going to launch me over the handlebars. Again, if in doubt on a rear shock, go too slow, because too slow won't put you in hospital. It will just mean that it will not react quickly enough with the small bumps and will give you a bit of a harsh ride, especially on braking bumps. You might lose it a little more if you don't have it fast enough. But it's trial and error again.